the Land League, the 4 aims that, and these have been teased out at various meetings, and the Land League really is a combination of a lot of different groups, protest groups, interest groups that have come along to the meetings. So the 4 aims, so the format for the meeting is I'm going to read out the 4 aims. We have speakers to speak on each of the topics. Some of them will be 5 minutes, some of them will be 10 minutes. I'm going to keep it fairly tight so as to get out of here on time. So please don't take any insults if you're told to cue this and move on. So like, we have a lot of people who are very dedicated and have researched in depth a lot of these issues. It's very hard for them to get it into in 5 or 10 minutes. So, but that's what we're going to go through today. Most of them have their information up on websites, and if people want it, then they can refer to the websites and move on. Basically, so that's how the meeting's going to be basically ran today. So I'm going to start off with on the four ideals and aims. Basically, the Land League is reformed, is to be a voice for all the people. Enough is enough, join the fight back. Number 1, restore the rule of law, injure no other or their property, promote education in common law, tackle corruption and corrupt practices, prioritise the health and real wealth of the people, put people and their health before economics, tackle the sickness in industry, and the sickness epidemic confronts GM agricultural and food promotion, challenge the corporatisation of the Irish people and the validity of the Lisbon Treaty. Now, I'm running through all of those items, and there's huge information behind all of these issues, and at further meetings the Land League has been developing a constitution and other issues which I'm going to talk about later on in the meeting. So behind all of these, while there's simple words that are there, there's a lot of information which we're not going to go into today because it's too detailed. Number 2, resolve outdated, immoral, unjust, invalid commercial rates. The commercial rates is a huge issue, and we're going to have somebody speaking on that. Demand support for the small SME sector, the small business sector. Small business people are the backbone of this economy, and effectively government has just wiped most small business people out, and if they're not wiped out, they're on the way to being wiped out. Resolve mortgage debt and end evictions. Resolve personal debt. On these items, there's 500,000 people in this country at the moment in financial difficulties that cannot service their debt. That is probably close to 25 to 30% of the earning people in the country. It's an enormous number, and our politicians don't seem to care. Number 3, reclaim our natural resources, oil, gas, water, fisheries and more. All of these natural resources have been given away over the years, and it certainly requires new thinking and a reinvigoration of all these industries. Recover our national assets from vulture funds and corporations and reclaim our national media. One of the biggest problems we have is that most of what we do is not even covered in mainstream media. So we have gone to social media and various YouTube channels and whatever else to try and highlight what we've been at for the last 12 months. Number 4, solve the banking problem with comprehensive national and regionalised public banking. Services incorporating the post offices, the credit unions, and socialise the benefit of banking instead of nationalising it for bad banks and bank debt. Tackle odious debt and demand debit-free money. A lot of these issues, a lot of people think they put their deposit money into a bank, and that if someone doesn't repay it, they are at risk of losing their money. Banking is not like that whatsoever. So there are huge issues in banking which most of the public don't get their heads around and don't understand. Most of the loans have been sold. The exact same as happened in the US when they went bust in 2008. All of their loans were rolled up and sold. That was quite public. We were told our banks didn't do any of that. As we now know, every bank in the country sold its loans. So we have a speaker that will be speaking on this to further elaborate on. Basically, they're the 4 aims, and the Land League has a website which is www.thelandleague.com. Now there is an earlier website, just for people who go online, there is an earlier website that's up, and the young fellow that set it up, emigrated to Australia, and has gone with the codes of it, and we can't take it down. So we have a new website, so if you go on, don't get confused on the earlier website and the newer website, which we will be setting up, and we will have people to register, etc. Coming in there, we had clipboards, and the whole idea really is for when we go to stop an eviction, which is what we, just an example, in Kildare, 3 or 4 weeks ago, we had one where over 100 people turned up, organised at a day's notice. We did another one which was organised at sort of 5 minutes notice down in County Meath in Arthout. On that occasion, it was people phoning each other and by texting or whatever else. So what we're trying to do is to put it onto a more regional basis, county by county. So if there's an eviction happening in different parts of the country, people from that area can be texted to turn up. Like what we've been at for the last year, like there's been people from Wexford being brought to Galway and vice versa. So we're trying to, and as we've gone to different protests, people have asked us what can they do. So what we're trying to do is to put that onto a texting and an email basis that we can send out texts to people if there's an eviction happening. The whole idea is that the Land League's intention is that there's going to be no evictions, because it's flawed thinking. If the banks are going to evict people, the whole issue then falls back on the state. 175,000 is the number of evictions being now realistically being talked about. If you'd have to rehouse those people, it's probably a bill of 35 to 40 billion. Who's going to pay that? It's half of what was given to the Irish banks again. So the whole thing is not thought out by government or politicians. This is a European problem, and it's a problem that has to be dealt with in Europe. We have the European elections coming up, and the whole idea is the Land League is not political. We have people from all different political ideals and thinking, and we're apolitical, and we will be supporting candidates and asking people to support candidates who anybody bar the current government, and people who will to send the message to this government that we are not happy at all with the current regime of evictions and evictions of small businesses, etc. I'm now going to hand over to Claire Knowles to speak on the restoration of the rule of law, and sorry, Claire will have 10 minutes.
I've been asked to read the paper on rule of law. I didn't write it, but I did write the few introduction words that I'm just going to say. By the very nature of our human existence, we have evolved into what we call a civil society. Society defines who we become and how we interact with each other. I am here today because there is something very wrong with the society I find myself living in. It appears it is a society where survival of the fittest is the rule. That rule applies in the jungle, or so we were led to believe. There are so many areas that this rule applies to. I've been searching for the area where I thought the problem stemmed from: banking, government, etc. I believe that the rule of law in capital letters is what is missing in our society, and I hope that the Land League can restore it. So I'll read it now. It's 12 minutes, Jerry. So the rule of law is summed up in one statement: violate no other, nor their property. Violate no other, examples being physical harm, assault, murder, rape, etc. Do not violate their property, examples being burglary, theft, arson, fraud. This is the true basis of the balance and harmony between man, the community, and with the earth itself. No person, no organisation, no institution, or no government should be above the rule of law. If one and all are held to the rule of law, it is impossible to violate people or their property. Some may also refer to the rule of law as the common law. Over 90% of people will go through their whole life without violating this, and if they do, it will only be in a very minor manner. That means that they are in balance with their fellow man and their community. Therefore, the world should be a place of abundance, peace and happiness for the whole majority of the Earth's population. Right, with a question mark. If the vast majority are in balance and follow the rule of law, then society by definition has to be in balance. It should be a certainty that the rule of law holds sway. It is pretty obvious, though, that the world is anything but in balance as it currently stands. So the rule of law must be absent the land as a governing principle. While the people may individually live like this, it must mean that the systems or infrastructure that run their lives do not adhere to the rule of law. The state designs, administers and regulates the infrastructure that runs society, and by extension much of our lives. Be this in areas like money creation, banking, justice, health, education, social policy, etc. It does all this under statute laws created by the state. If our natural human condition is to be in balance with the rule of law, which it is for the majority, could it be that the statute legal system is not in balance with the rule of law, and therefore is actively working against the individual, the community and the earth itself? Currently, statute law of the nation state has led us to a situation where insanity and tyranny reign on our land. State money creation and taxation, borrowing money for the markets. This is essentially granting private hedge fund companies, pension and insurance industries a lien on people's future labour and time. Very often, no money changes hands. It is all digital pledges, and our state promises to repay the providers of said digital pledges at a premium on their investment. This premium is interest that is funded by the life force of the people, which is quite literally a slavery system. To fund these repayments, ever-increasing taxation is required. Currently in Ireland, the introduction of water charges, property tax and all other taxes that are rising is funding this totally unnecessary model. All this model does is enrich minority vested interests. People, via their governments, could issue their own money with no interest committed to third parties. Therefore, most modern taxation and funding of the state violates the rule of law, as people's lives, labour, finances and time are being violated and attacked to fund a model that actively works against them. The mortgage industry. Banks lie in stating that they loan real money to borrowers and that there is a third-party creditor to whom they owe this debt. The debt was created out of thin air and has no backing to any tangible asset. There is no creditor who is owed this money. See recently the reports that were issued by the Central Bank of England and the German Central Bank, proving once and for all that this is the case. Mortgages created out of thin air, as above, is causing systemic inflation of all prices across society, as there is no limit to the credit that can be created out of thin air. Solicitors offering legal advice as part of the sale endorse a view that the bank lent money to the borrower, charging interest on mortgages when this money does not exist anywhere in society. Courts foreclosing on real physical property, as in our family homes, to reimburse the supposed creditors if the mortgage commitment is not met, when in fact no lawful or real creditor exists. The mortgage industry is designed to fail, as there is not enough money in circulation for all the people to repay these loans. The question to ask then, is the man or woman and their property being violated? I think after that you'd all have to say yes. In a sense, the whole mortgage industry is predicated on the belief that money was borrowed and has to be repaid. It was not borrowed from anybody. All banks hold liens against the property of the people for this transaction. If a borrower does not service their loan for any reason, then the bank can foreclose on their homes in the court of this country. So the person and their property are at a constant threat of violation, and a certain percentage are destined to lose their home. This is guaranteed because the bank charges interest and this interest does not exist anywhere in society. Therefore, some people inevitably have to fall off the edge and lose their home. The state also endorses this industry wholly. It is a gross violation of the rule of law. Health. Compulsory water fluoridation in the face of staggeringly high levels of scientific studies outlining its absolute detrimental effect on all areas of health. This is a direct and gross violation of the rule of law, as it physically attacks our people. The cancer industry, repression and refusal to admit many touted and potential cures for cancer. Examples being the knowledge of slightly alkalized human cells do not ever become cancerous. Hemp oil, pure wheatgrass, etc., and restricting access to such information and potential clinical trials is also violating the people. Education. Active policies that discourage any educational model that does not include the state controlling the content, direction and extent of the education of our children. As a very current example, homeschooling is being attacked, albeit slowly at first, by the Department of Education. Justice. Inconsistent outcomes in criminal matters for violations against the person or their property. Wide variance in sentencing, almost a lottery-like effect. Perceived sense from the people that justice is a private club owned by solicitors, barristers and judges. In reality, when people live by the rule of law, they are the law. They should be able to stand in absolute confidence in any courtroom and meet the claimants head on. This again is especially true in mortgage cases. Banks cannot be the creditors as already outlined above, and hence cannot be the lawful plaintiff in laying claim to people's property. However, our current justice system fully endorses this model. A man or woman should be 100% confident that they could fend off any unlawful advances from these institutions in a court case. Justice criminalises the man or woman who may be fully in balance with the rule of law for minor civil matters, usually tied into unlawful taxation to fund, again, unlawful money creation, such as car tax, road tolls, TV licence and all forms of registration. Social affairs. Reducing or inhibiting social services for the people to fund and pay unlawful money creation models. Examples of this being social welfare cuts, hospitals closing, cutbacks in education, etc. All of these policies actively work against the life force of the men and women of this land and are not necessary if we had a lawful money creation policy. The rule of law is not complicated. In fact, it is staggeringly simple. If one can manage to never violate another or their property, then they should be assured that their life force, resources, sanity, joy, happiness and love cannot be violated in any way. If we do not have the rule of law on the land, then we have nothing. The state may declare that words like this is a call to anarchy. Anarchy can be defined in many ways, but one is the lack of governance and law. We have certainly had our fill of governance, but just looking at the very recent outrageous decisions from our courts, it is obvious that we have very little true law. So the system that points at us and screams that the ways cannot be changed are the very people who allow such tyranny to hold sway. Could it be that they, and not us, are the real anarchists? After all, we vote every 5 years expecting to have both fair governance and by extension a fair law. As you depart here today for Munster, Leinster, Ulster or Connacht and go home to live your life in balance with the rule of law, as you and yours statistically are more than likely to do, it might be just worth reflecting on where the real problems lie in this utterly dysfunctional society of ours. We have a job of work ahead of us, for sure, but if we can correctly identify the nub of this issue, then at least we have a chance. It is time for the rule of law to be returned to this land, and that one and all can adhere to the said law.
Thank you, Claire. The next speaker is Joe Patterson, who's going to speak on commercial rates. Joe has spoken on commercial rates as a businessman quite a number of occasions, so it's over to Joe.
I've been involved for the last number of years on the commercial rates issue and the unfairness of commercial rates. And the most amazing thing of the whole lot was the meetings that we had with government and their lack of knowledge or caring or anything whatsoever on the hardship and what have you that this is causing. Now, just to give you an idea, the commercial rates are collected going back to an 1800 and whatever Poor Law Act, which to me has no bearing in present day. Now, we just take, for instance, on my left here, we have three different people. And we say Claire in the red has a large supermarket taking in 30,000 per day. And Claire in the middle has a filling station and all that goes with it, taking in 20,000 per day. And Jerry has a commercial unit where he parks his machinery when they come back from site, taking in absolutely nothing. It doesn't make any difference. The rate per square foot is the same. Now, how that can be fair, I don't know. Now, we all have local towns that we see are being absolutely decimated and closing down, and my own town is one of them, where we are left with nearly nothing, only hairdressers, bookie offices, pound shops and what have you, because the heart has been torn out of the towns and the multinationals are coming and setting up on the outskirts of the towns with ample car parking, while the traffic wardens go up and down patrolling outside the shops to close them down. And we're getting absolutely no help whatsoever from government. And the saddest fact of the whole lot is that as it stands, we've lost everything. But when they take away your ability to pull yourself out of the hole that you're in, that's definitely unforgivable. Now, I don't know how many people here are involved in commercial rates or are affected by commercial rates. There might be very few. And you might ask, what has that got to do with the Land League? Well, if we tear the heart out of the towns and the small, medium enterprises, who's going to employ the people? I am in the unfortunate situation where I have a commercial building and I'm also a subcontractor. So you can imagine the lifestyle I have for the last number of years. We can't get paid for any work we do. We're working at 50% efficiency because we have to drop off and leave a job till tomorrow till we get money, and that's the situation that the whole country is in, and absolutely no idea from the government of what's actually happening. Now, we're told that commercial rates are for services. Now, you have to bear in mind that going back 50, 60 years ago, everybody paid rates, and the giveaway government took the rates off the private houses, which left the business community and the farming section, and then the farming community took a court case and were successful, which left the commercial rates only on the business sector. And this is very unfair in the sense that it's one section of the community being targeted, which I would imagine is unconstitutional as well as everything else. But the main thing is that if you study government over the last 100 years, we have allowed them to create monsters that have to be fed. And these monsters are county councils and the like of these, all these groups and quangos and what have you. And while they're at Fairyhouse Racecourse today or away on a family day out, we are here trying to survive, while they have pensions, large salaries and the whole lot. And I think today should be the start of the rest of our lives. And the reason we put commercial rates into it is that if whoever knocks on your door from whatever party over the next 4 to 5 weeks or whatever up until the election, their party piece now is commercial rates. And everybody's going to do something on commercial rates, and then when the election is over, it's finished. Now, I have a very short threshold regarding organisations that are not going to do something, or talking shops. We are not going to be a talking shop. We are going to take on the government on the commercial rates, and what I would like to see happening is that we go into dialogue over the next few weeks with the government, and failing that, we have to pull the nuclear button, which every business in the country has been threatening to do for a long time, but nobody has the courage to do it. So as far as if you row in behind us on the commercial rates on anyone that it affects, we will do our best to get rid of this situation as it stands and try and find a more favourable situation where monies can be collected for a slimmed down, efficient council, if the council is going to be left. Now, as I said, these organisations that we have created, we had a situation over beside us where the Board of Works were doing a fantastic job on an abbey not too far away from where I was, and we spent months trying to find out what it actually cost. I would have loved to have got the job for 40,000. It cost 200,500 euros, 125,000 in wages. So that's the divide between the real world and the world that these guys live in. So I'll hand you now back to Jerry, and hopefully we can get people on board that are involved or affected by commercial rates to try and change the situation. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is on reclaiming our natural resources and assets, oil and gas, is Dominic Sherlock.
Basically, we've signed over ownership. Our current oil and gas licensing regime hands ownership to the prospecting company, and the only thing that Ireland would get out of it is a percentage of the tax on the profit. But as you've seen in other sectors, tech sectors, etc., that gets whittled down to very, very little. So again, it seems like something that doesn't affect us directly, but we import all of our oil anyway, and the vast majority of our gas that we consume here, and that basically is the same cost of a whole other tourism industry. If we could do away with importing so much fuel, we'd basically double the revenue that we get from our tourism industry, and we all know how important that is for Ireland. So I'm not going to go on too long with this. There's plenty of information on our website, which is ooo.ie, and you can go and check that out there. But I would just urge people to be informed about it. If you look at what happened with our fisheries in the same water, we have 24% of the EU's fishable waters, but we've handed over the rights, and you can see in fishing communities all around Ireland, it's really hurting, and they have to keep it to a certain quota of catch, and then they have to dump any excess, which is complete madness altogether. And now people are wondering, why are we not doing something? Why is the government not doing something about our oil and gas? And it's a very good question, and I think if we bring that to people who come electioneering and say, what is going on with this, how much do you know about it, it's going to make it a real issue. When we look at all the cuts that are coming in and all that's been given away in bailing out bondholders, that is minuscule compared to the potential wealth that we could get if we manage our resources better. So it's in our hands, it's up to us to do something about it, and if we don't, generations to come are going to wonder why we didn't. If you look at what happened in Norway, they made a much better deal because they had some politicians and civil servants with a bit of steel and a bit of nous about them, and they said, you can't come in here and take all this and just give us a small percentage of profit, or a flat rate as was proposed to them. They got people on site who were going to learn enough to set up a national oil company, and they've got a much better deal. They've put all that money into a sovereign wealth fund, and now Norway it owns and controls basically a huge percentage of the world stock market. And that for a small fishing country which has the same population as our own. So it's not like we've got to reinvent the wheel. We just need to look at how other countries have done it better and stand up for Ireland and do it ourselves. Now there's a lot of more information linked from the Land League's website, which you can go and check out, and you can check out our own website as well, which is ooo.ie, Own Our Oil, and hopefully when the electioneering happens, come around and ask them what are people going to do, because this is a real resource we're about to sign away and we'll never get it back. It's equivalent to, if you can imagine, getting a tanker and sucking up the Shannon onto the tanker and exporting it. Now you can't see our oil and gas, so it doesn't seem that real, but that is what we're doing. And if somebody was to propose that to you and say, we'll get up to 25%, but the effective tax rate would be less, it'll be in single digits, you would think you're out of your mind. And the worst part of all that is, our rivers are actually replenishable. Enough rain will fall and that will come back, but our oil and gas is not. And when that goes, it's gone forever, and we need to get something out of it now so we can build on it for future generations, because on the world scene, what we have is minuscule, and a big company will just, farm it away with all the other stuff that they got. But in our own scale, it will power our country for years to come and allow us to get into more sustainable other forms of energy, hydro, etc. But right now we're getting absolutely nothing out of it, and all it would take is a stroke of a pen from the Minister. There's a licence review happening right now. A company called Wood Mackenzie, who were brought in to advise on the Shell Corrib issue, and we all know how well that went. Beg pardon? Yeah, the consultants. That's more of it. That's exactly the point. Public money going to consultants. And what happened the last time in June 2012, there was a joint Oireachtas committee that looked into this, and they, with impartial advice, they got in Norwegians, the whole lot, they said we should raise our tax rate to 80%. It's currently at 25%. And the Minister decided not to follow that advice. So these consultancies that they bring in are just rubber stamp issues to try and get them over a hurdle, get them past an election, and then they'll do whatever they want after it. The first comment on it in the Dáil from the current Minister was a year after the last review was done. It's absolute nonsense. So what we need to do is, and we've met with members of this consultancy, we're going to meet with again this week, but what we need to do is hold the Minister to whatever findings are there and demand a better deal for Ireland. And that is going to come entirely down to the people in this room and those whom you tell about it, not just about Owner Oil, but also about the Land League in general, because if you shrug your shoulders and say, it looks like a tough hill to climb, we're not going to get anywhere. We need to do this, and we do it one step at a time, and it's possible, and if we don't do it, we only have ourselves to blame. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Claire Leonard.
I've been given 5 minutes to talk about the corporatisation of our resources. Now, let me say before that this has absolutely nothing to do with capitalism, and it has nothing to do with socialism. This is about crony corporatism, nothing else. And if we start fighting between ourselves as to left or right, capitalism or socialism, we'll be destroyed and they'll walk away licking their lips. We cannot find ourselves in a situation where we start fighting about the crumbs that are left on the table after they've destroyed our country. So let's try to avoid falling into that pitfall, okay? International financial interests see fit to place an illegal, odious debt on our backs. This debt is not our debt, it's illegal under international law. Now they seek to use this indebtedness to rob our resources and take financial advantage of the entire population. A classic move. Indebt the country, turn us into debt slaves, then plunder our resources. Let us here today stand together and assert our rights as sovereign people, and we are sovereign. We are sovereign. Let us assert our right to the control and ownership of our resources. The government owns nothing, we do. Just remember that. They use buzzwords and fear-based propaganda like water shortages. Well, did you ever? Right. Pollution control. They even dare to take control of our seed, thereby taking control of our very food supply. A bunch of pseudo-science looters robbing our bogs, our water, our wind. The Troika has, through austerity, transformed Ireland and an economic decline into the most rapid economic collapse in modern history. And we're all here struggling day to day when most of us should be retired, trying to survive. Now, they don't ask us to pay for the very water we drink, they command us to pay for the water we drink, to enrich the very same multinational bankers that robbed us in the first place. The Troika and the ECB are now dependent on banks to launder this odious illegal debt. and the banks have become dependent on the ECB to provide them with cheap money. Effectively, we're living in a corporate state. As long as we're content to be lied to, rather than face up to the disgraceful truth, and everyone in this room, we can't do this on our own. Everyone has to stand their ground and take back this country and take back our resources. If we fail to do it, the status quo will be maintained. We have to have the courage. We need a culture of caring about the future generations, and the longer Ireland continues to comply with this illegal bailout and the agreement to sell off our assets, the debt burden will become even greater. We must put these international financial vested interests on notice that Ireland, as Paul said, Ireland is not for sale. I'd like to put a vote to the floor, and the vote is to notify these people. Please note that any contract signed in relation to the disposal of state assets as a result of an illegal odious debt where irregularity or corruption is suspected will be legally reviewed by the people of Ireland. I'd like a show of hands in support of that contention. Thank you very much. We'll take that as a vote of yes. Thank you. Do we have your permission to place an ad in the newspaper to that effect? Yes. Thank you. You have 420 million people living in an economic and financial system no one voted for. Ireland has 80% of our laws originating from a body no one voted for. 27 countries have accepted a system that makes China and Zimbabwe look democratic. If Ireland was run by 27 unelected members, there would be an outcry. We have to stand together and take back our country. We were stitched up and we were stitched in by incompetent politicians and international financial thugs. Now it's time for us to stand together, shoulder to shoulder, and very carefully undo their corrupt stitch-up. Thank you.
We have two further speakers. We have John Winchell speaking on electromagnetic pollution.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much. It's an honour to be standing here in front of an Irish people as someone born from a foreign country. Now, what I'm talking about is electromagnetic radiation and the dangers that to every single person in this room, not just from the static that you're hearing from your cell phones in the speaking system, but our whole environment. Our lives are being taken, as I stand here, by microwave electromagnetic radiation from cell phones and tetra signal from the guards and all of the wireless equipment that you have in your homes. And just to, I've been researching this for about 6 years, and just not to go too deeply into it, but I just want to touch base on the beginnings of this with a chap called Nikola Tesla. Nikola Tesla was a genius. He worked with Thomas Edison, so we're going back to 1892 and the first illumination of the World's Fair at a Columbian Exposition in Chicago. In the early 1900s, Tesla had invented a tower, and that's relevant, a tower, and he was intending to transmit radio signals across the Atlantic, but he was also intending to give free electricity to humanity. His financial backer was a man called J.P. Morgan. That is really relevant to Ireland today, and I'll get to that later. What happened is that J.P. Morgan found out that he was going to give electricity for free to humanity, and he pulled the plug on it. The U.S. military was brought in and destroyed the tower. So we've been at this for 100 years now, or they have, with the patents, quietly working away to get the technology to bring this control grid into being. I have one report here. This is from the States, from the RAND Corporation. This report states that they knew in 1948 how to inflict cataracts on rabbits because their eyes are the same size as human beings by using electromagnetic frequencies, 1948. Here we have a document from the Naval Medical Research Institute, and this one is from the early 1970s, and it states there were more than 2,000 references on biological responses to radio frequency and microwave radiation published up to June 1971. My point is, they have known all along that this technology is dangerous to human beings, to animals, and to insects, and indeed to all living things. Which brings me then to today. Just to update you, this is just from today, from my contacts around the world. From Canada, 2 scientists break silence on major flaws in the Royal Society's recent report on the safety of cell phones and towers, smart meters, and Wi-Fi. Now they're bringing in smart meters for water. They're the thin edge of the wedge. They are not on 24/7, but the electricity ones are. And they give the equivalent of up to 40,000 cell phone calls a day into your house. In Ontario, they've spotted clouds of electromagnetic radiation plasma floating down suburban streets. We are electromagnetic beings, and this will definitely harm us. And there's the evidence, I've just mentioned some of it here. From the UK, now this is from Northern Ireland, 2 lads attending a conference, a teachers' conference in Manchester. The first one says, teachers call for parents to turn off Wi-Fi. The second one is, infants unable to use toy building blocks due to iPad addiction. Think about that. From California, the health risks from wireless technology is growing. From, let's see, come on, sorry. The effect of wireless radiation, and this affects Ireland tremendously, and I understand Sheikh Maktoum isn't too pleased. This lady is a horse trainer, and she says, I can't tell you how difficult this has been for me in Southern California. Humans are almost super glued to their wireless devices here. The point is that her horses are sick and very uncomfortable. They're in pain, constant pain. That's the horses. Now, from Australia, this is an interesting one. This one is about a man, this is just from today now. John Patterson, he was a cell phone communication executive for 20 years. And once he found out what they were doing and what was happening, he commandeered an army tank and set about knocking down cell phone towers. Okay? And he's just gotten out of prison after 22 months. That's how serious this is being taken. And we're not getting this news in the mainstream media, by the way. From Spain, Wi-Fi tablets, they're too much risk for our health. Some of the symptoms, by the way, irritability, aggressiveness, insomnia, lack of concentration, transient memory loss, and a more extended and a slight constant headache. That's just the beginning. Then it goes to tinnitus, brain tumors, and other forms of cancer. Now, so what's going to happen to Ireland? Well, this is what Barry Trower says. Barry Trower is a physicist in England, and he's been making waves over in America. This is a direct quote. So if you were to say to me, said Trower, what's going to happen to Ireland? It's simple. You're going to see an epidemic of birth defects, and it's happening right now, by the way. There's a tremendous increase in Down syndrome as well as autism. You're going to see an epidemic of birth defects with livestock and children that will put thalidomide way into the shade. That is going to happen without a shadow of a doubt. You are also going to lose the viability of your country. That can't be helped as well unless you do something. It's profound stuff. Now, and just in relation to the pylons, some of you may have seen this. Even Minister Riley admits that the electricity on the power lines and the pylons causes leukemia. Now, to get back to what I was saying initially about Tesla and JP Morgan. JP Morgan pretty much owns Ireland and us. They were the first ones to sign up to the Financial Services Center. They're bondholders. But also, JP Morgan gave seed money to a company called Shared Access. Shared Access bought or leased space on all the government's masts, the Garda Síochána, for instance, with a view to subletting to all the other independent operators. So that's why you have co-location on government masts, because it's JP Morgan is behind that. Now, in the middle of all of this, what's happening, we're having cutbacks. We're having cutbacks in health. So as people get sick, you won't be able to get care to cure you. Motor neuron disease has been the first one where they don't want to give a medical card if you develop motor neuron disease. If you have the early stages of cancer, they don't want to give you a medical card. Now, it doesn't make much sense to me to wait until someone's seriously ill. Now, all of this ties directly into a UN Agenda 21, which deals with rural depopulation. So, Mr. Patterson talked earlier there about his village dying. I live in Leixlip, and it's dying. This is intentional, because as in Iowa, they have, the farmers have been forced to sell their land. These electricity companies, the pylon companies, buy the land cheap and make wind farms. So a couple of years ago, I was in Indiana. I drove, it was my primary school reunion, and we drove through Indiana to my mother's home in Kentucky. And we drove through a wind farm. Now, when I was a child, the front of the car was so covered with insects that we had to get the car washed before we even went to visit the family. This time, there was one insect on the front of the car. All you could hear for miles was whoosh, 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 which brings up a whole other subject called infrasound. But all I want to say here is that be aware of what is happening. Just because you can't see electromagnetic radiation doesn't mean it's not hurting you. We have SADS, subdental death syndrome, 3 a week are dying from it, children, and it's happening all around the country. So thank you very much for listening to me, and I please welcome.
Thanks, John. Jim Miller is our next speaker, and I'm just going to, before Jim comes up, what I wanted to do was actually, while we're non-political, Deputy Matty McGrath has come in there, and he has to get back down to Tipperary or something. So Matty has been at a lot of our protests, etc. So I want to.
Good morning, Carter Galeer. I'm delighted. I'm here quite a while just as the meeting started, and I really enjoyed all the presentations. I look forward to Jim's one as well. So I'm not going to make a political speech or anything else. I just want to give I suppose, my view from the Oireachtas where I am elected as supposed to represent the people, which I'm not allowed to do. Because I was part of the last government, which saw the huge failures I raised against it. Nobody listened. I voted for the bank guarantee because I was summoned to Dublin and I was told that I protested and remonstrated with Minister Linehan for hours. And he just... Yeah, I accept that. I accept that No, I accept that totally. I made a mistake, one of the biggest mistakes of my life. I was told by the officials and him that, God rest him now, that there'd be no money in the banking machines and the abyss, but how much worse could the abyss have been? But that's where I am. I voted against the bank guarantee, and because I knew what and the so-called, I call it a clean out, so-called bailout, but I totally voted against that, sorry, voted for the bank guarantee, voted against it, and we fell out with Minister Lennon and myself over that. But look, we are where we are, but this government promised whatever. Not listen to anybody. You take the rates, for instance. An elected member of any county council, which I was, has no legal representation. If you challenge the manager on anything, you're told, you call in, you're told, look, you could be liable here yourself for this, and you have to get the same legal advice. Same legal advice as the county manager and management gets. So the whole system is creaking, and it needs to be challenged. It needs to be challenged, and I'm just here to support you today. I think Jerry and the lads, Friends of Banking and whatever, have done tremendous work, and some other groups have done tremendous work around the country in regards to the evictions and the persecution of people, whether it's business people. So yeah, I accept that. I've been at many, and I'm just saying I'm only one, and I'm answering to the people of South Tipperary, and I'm prepared for that. But I'm just making the point that I'm here to support you, listen to the speakers, and we have to act together If we don't, it'll be too late. That's all I want to say to you, and I thank Jerry for inviting me. Sorry? 140, yes, section 140, yes. Well, that's for planning, yes, that's a planning legislation. No. Look, I'm only making the point that the rates come up. It's I'm a small businessman myself. Sorry? How's that work? I have been there with Jelly Beans.
Manny has been supportive of all of the projects.
I have been there. But look, I'm not going to interrupt the meeting. I'll take any questions you want me after, but you have a guest speaker I want to listen to as well. So I told Jelly I'd rush back, but I'm waiting until the meeting finished, and I'll meet any of you that want to talk to me. So thanks a million.